Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today, we've got a early impression video on a house that I'm really taken with, really smitten with this house. It's actually the house of Papillon. And I've got multiple Papillon bottles, full bottles in my collection. I actually was blessed within the last year, it was last summer actually, to do an interview with the founder, perfumer, owner, just an amazing woman and creator, and I would love to have her back on the channel one of these days. Miss Liz Moores, she did about an hour and 15-minute interview with me. We probably could have gone for 3 to 5 hours and not missed a beat. I love listening to her creative process and her thoughts on fragrance and her story and how she kind of overcame and all that good stuff. Speaking of listening to stories of perfumers, on Wednesday, March 8th, we're going to have Mark Sage in the studio with us. Well, not in my room, literally, but virtually he'll be here with us. And we're going to discuss his story. He's the owner of Clandestine Laboratories. And so I am very much looking forward to, hearing what he has to say about how he became a brand owner and a perfumer and all of this great stuff. So, here's one of his bottles. This is Film Noir, and he's got a sample set coming to me, hopefully very soon. And so I can't wait to get to smell those with him and talk about his brand, and it should be a fantastic time. March 8th, 2023, 4 to 5 o'clock Central Time will probably be the starting time. So, let's talk about the point of this video, which is an early impression on a Papillon fragrance called Bengale Rouge. And you can kind of see some of the notes right there. She lists tonka, sweet myrrh, rose, orris, and sandalwood. And I just want to read a couple quotes. You know, sometimes I like to go through my library of books that I mostly collected, you know, when I was much younger. And in college, I was obsessed with reading business books. Don't ask me why. Don't ask why. When everyone else was out partying, and I did my fair share of partying, but I also read stuff like this. This is a book called Mind Your Own Business by Sidney Harmon. And Sidney Harmon actually ended up founding Harman Kardon, which is like a very well-known, respectable, they do like high-end speakers. If you ever see like Harman Kardon speakers and, you know, Mercedes or stuff like that, that's his brand. So he wrote this book. And in a couple places, he has some quotes. And I was just kind of flipping through these, which I will do from time to time. And a couple of these quotes jumped out to me as far as my perfume journey goes. So listen to this. This is actually from Ulysses. Yet all experience is an arch, where through gleams that untraveled world whose margin fades forever and forever when I move. How dull it is to pause, to make an end, to rust unburnished, not to shine in use. That's from Alfred Lord Tennyson from Ulysses. And I got to thinking, you know, how true that quote is in the perfume world, especially for this particular fragrance, Bengale Rouge, because this fragrance is a fragrance that Liz Moores, I don't remember if we talked about it during the interview or when we were just chatting backstage before we hit basically play, but the story behind Bengale Rouge is this. She has a cat. I believe the cat's name is Mimi, if I'm not mistaken. And she was saying that one of her favorite fragrances of all time to wear is a fragrance called Shalimar, which, of course, is one of the most popular and well-known and influential fragrances ever. For me, it's probably, it made my top 10. Most loved perfumes. I did a top 100 countdown, and it made my top 10. It was in that top 100. And it's a very personal fragrance to me, not just because of, I think it's the greatest Oriental ever made, which I do. I think it opened the doors for so many other Oriental style fragrances, but also it's very personal to me because it kind of tore down that masculine feminine line. You know, there was a time in the past where if a house marketed a fragrance as feminine, I wouldn't even look at it. You know, I wouldn't even consider it. I would just say it wasn't for me, you know, and I never even gave them a chance. Shalimar tore that down. Shalimar completely tore down the you know, feminine, masculine barrier in perfume for me. And it opened up a whole nother world. And thank God it did, because I never would have discovered all of the beautiful feminine fragrances like Shalimar, Mitsuko, Roche's Femme. I mean, you go down the list. Chanel No. 19, on and on and on. A huge portion, basically like half of the fragrance world, is locked out to you if you're not open to trying, you know, if you're a woman, masculines, or if you're a man, feminines. And now the niche world is pretty much releasing everything unisex anyways. But most of, you know, masculine, feminine briefs are just that. They're marketing briefs. But Shalimar is a very personal fragrance to me because it kind of tore down the lines and opened that world up to me. And the reason I'm mentioning Shalimar so much, and I will continue to mention it, because you can't talk about Bengale Rouge without talking about Shalimar, because it is the fragrance that inspired Bengale Rouge. So basically the story goes that whenever Liz Moores would kind of pet her cat, you know, after wearing Shalimar, that the perfume would kind of rub off on her cat. And whenever you mix that, you know, furry, animalic, you know, cats have that furry, animalic type smell, and you mix it with Shalimar, that gave her the idea for Bengale Rouge. I love the story. Let me read you the blurb, and then we'll kind of talk about what I get from it. So let me read you the blurb here. I'm just going to grab another fragrance that I want to reference later on. So here's officially from the Papillon website, $149, free shipping for 50 mils, which is extremely fair. This is what her bottles look like. This is what her bottles look like right here. And 50 mils, juice from her for 50 mils, I think is a very fair price. I think she could double that price, and I think it would still probably be worth it for her fragrances. In the realm of some of the stuff I've been smelling lately, some of my blind sniffing sessions have been taking me to houses lately like Xerjoff and Memo Paris, and I smelled Unique Luxury. Oh God, Unique Luxury. Oh. And so, you know, and they're charging insane prices. It is a steal for what she's offering. I think she has one of the best niche house offerings as far as value for money, quality, attention to detail, creativity, everything combined. I think Papillon is at the top of the niche house list right now when you factor everything together. And so here's the little blurb from her website. The perfume notes are sandalwood, Turkish rose, honey, vanilla, and sweet myrrh, which is a Papanax. So it says, a golden fur, swathed in sandalwood and doused in honey. Sweet myrrh purrs behind a warm rosy skin, misted with oak moss and dappled in the rich shades of a leopard pelt. A cozy caramel comfort glows from a gourmand heart, while sweet tonka slinks in opulent softness upon your skin. Even her blurbs are good. Perfumer's Inspiration says, the muse for this perfume is my Bengal cat, Mimi. Hey, I remember the name. I have always been captivated by the beauty of her fur and her natural perfume. I didn't want to create a literal fragrance, rather a reimagining of the notes that lay upon her leopard coat. It was important that this perfume brought the comfort and warmth that so many of us receive from our pets, as well as do justice to Mimi's natural elegance and grace. I moved away from dramatic, feral notes and focused upon a domesticated coziness that would embrace the wearer with the same snugness and pleasure that I feel when I am with her. I wanted to include some of the exotic facets of the Bengal cat's origins, unique, elegant, striking. I hope to capture the majesty and mystery of these beautiful creatures in a sumptuous and soft perfume. And let me tell you, when we were backstage and maybe even on the video, the cat kind of jumped up on the little, chair that she was sitting on. And what a beautiful cat it is, to be fair. Fantastic, lovely. And they're so graceful and elegant animals. And so yes, it is, for a inspiration, beautiful inspiration. And apparently this fragrance, she's had a couple fragrances that have won Fragrance Foundation finalist awards and stuff like that. But this particular one, if I'm not mistaken, Bengale Rouge came out in 2019. So it's one of her newer releases. Oh, God. So first of all, if you know anything about me, you know that this type of DNA I love. I mentioned Shalimar. There's other fragrances we're going to talk about that fall into this category of fragrance. And the only way I'm really going to be able to compare this is to discuss kind of differences, because it's going to be so ubiquitous, and it's going to be so easy to compare to something like Shalimar or other fragrances of, you know, that Shalimar ended up launching later on, that you just can't do a review without talking about the past when it comes to Bengale Rouge. And honestly, that doesn't bother me. I have no problem with that at all. And this isn't a clone or anything like that. It has its differences, but you know, you're getting a fragrance that is heavily inspired by Shalimar. That's number one. There's no doubt about that. So some of the differences to begin, when you first spray, which I did about half an hour ago, and I've got about a 6-hour dry down here. I've been wearing it all day. I've worn it to bed once before this previously. And you basically get hit with this citrusy opening that, you know, if you know Shalimar, okay, if you know Shalimar, you're going to instantly think that you're getting a dose of bergamot, like a big dose of bergamot. But the difference is, whereas Shalimar is so known for its use of heavy bergamot, like 30% bergamot is what you end up getting in the top of Shalimar. Here, with Bengale Rouge, I detect a little difference, you know, a little difference as far as the citrus opening goes. So she doesn't list any citruses in the note listing, but there's no, I mean, I don't know how you would create this DNA without bergamot. To me, bergamot has to be a part of this formula. And probably some lemon, maybe some, you know, lime, that kind of thing, you know. It gives a little bit of a different citrus opening to kind of draw you in. So the opening is just a little bit different. However, if you know that Shalimar contrast between the heavy citrusy opening of beautiful bergamot, and bergamot's not a cheap material, by the way. Good quality Calabrian bergamot is extremely expensive. Everything smells of the highest quality here, okay? So one thing that kind of came up in our interview with her is we were talking about just how thick some of her fragrances look. Like, I mean, you can see just how dark and syrupy and thick some of them look, especially Anubis. Look at Anubis. I mean, it almost wears like an extrait too. When you spray it, it's like oily on your skin. You know, look at this. I sprayed this like half an hour ago. It's just like a sheen, you know? And so she talked about how many of her fragrances, even though they're listed as eau de parfums, they come across as being closer to extrait. So she doesn't list them as extrait because they're, you know, 1% or so more would push it to extrait. But she kept it at eau de parfum to keep the price down. And I really respect her for that, because a lot of houses are going the other way. They're adding that extra 1%, which really doesn't change the smell much, calling it an extrait and tripling the price, or doubling the price, or tripling the price, or whatever it is. It's like a money grab idea. And so not just do I respect her for her work, but I also respect her for her, you know, thoughtfulness to try to get this to as many people as possible and to be as fair as possible. I'm in love with the house. Absolutely in love with the house of Papillon. So this opens up, to me, a little bit more, let's say, citrusy in a way that's slightly different from Shalimar. But what you're going to notice is, you're going to notice that bergamot is the star of the citruses. To me, it is. It smells like it is. I don't know how you could create this opening without bergamot being the star. It just, I can't comprehend it necessarily. And, you know, if you've smelled Shalimar, you know that it adds this very kind of deep, herbal, obviously citrusy, but there's this brightness about it, this sunny kind of, this sunny brightness, if you will. And it adds this roundness to a perfume. Bergamot adds, you know, roundness to me. And that's what I get in the opening of Bengale Rouge. Lots of citruses, But one thing that tends to kind of jump forward a little sooner is that honey. So you're going to get a little bit of this honey, but it's never overdone, never too sweet. It's not the sickly sweet honeys of Naxos or anything like that. No, this is completely different. This is elegant, natural, fresh, outdoor honey. You know, that's the feeling that I get. Almost like local honey, if that makes sense. In the sense that it's like, it's not processed through a giant corporation and just made in bulk, right? It feels kind of farm-made honey for some reason to my nose. And so Shalimar is known for basically a couple things. I mentioned the heavy concentration of bergamot, and also it's known as kind of the best vanilla perfume. To me, it is. Shalimar is the greatest vanilla perfume of all time that I've ever come across. When I rank my vanilla list, when I do my This Is Not a Top 10 vanilla, there is no doubt in my mind that Shalimar will be number one. This is a vintage bottle. This actually came from Rich Mitch. Thank you, Rich. It lived in the duck den. Now it's in the ram sable. And so I'm blessed to have that bottle, but I have like 3 or 4 other bottles and different concentrations. This is the vintage eau de toilette. But also, it's a 97 ml bottle. Look at this. How cool is that? Just a weird kind of little size. It's like a little Coca-Cola bottle, right? And I also have the eau de parfum. I have the extrait. So I have multiple types of Shalimar, multiple versions that... the Parfum de Toilette, which is probably my favorite. The Parfum de Toilette is so, so good. But they all basically have this contrast between that heavy bergamot top, which adds that citrus roundness, and that vanilla base. And to me, no one does vanilla like Guerlain. It's extremely hard to compete with Guerlain. And if you remember, or if you watch that interview that I did with Liz Moores, there was a point where she said she was describing how she kind of came to own her brand and got to this point. And there was a point where she was going to give up. You know, after Anubis, she thought, oh, this was kind of a one-hit wonder. No one would want to wear my stuff. I can't, you know, maybe I just lucked into making Anubis. Who am I? I'm not Chanel. You know, that was literally what she said. She said, who am I? I'm not Chanel. Why would anyone care what I have to do? And now here she is basically competing with the likes of what I consider to be the best French houses in the world. She's competing with Guerlain as far as I'm concerned. Very hard for me to put a fragrance. It takes a lot. You guys know that. It takes a lot for me to put a fragrance up there with something like Shalimar. And I can do this with confidence. I have no problem heaping praises onto the house of Papillon. And so there's a few perfumes that kind of get close to the heart and soul of Papillon to me. There's a couple of them. So I would say, and I can almost wear them interchangeably. Again, I know that almost sounds blasphemous since I'm saying like this is the one, but this came out in the mid-1920s, okay? Long time ago. It was a different world back then. We're coming up on Shalimar's 100-year anniversary, right? And since then, other houses have kind of taken a stab at trying to make a fragrance in this style, right? So I grabbed a couple that I think really lend themselves to Shalimar. To me, like when I wear them, I kind of get the soul of Shalimar, if that makes sense. You know, it's not going to capture the smell exactly, but they've pretty much captured the soul of Shalimar and what Shalimar stands for. Because if you know Shalimar, you know that basically the Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan made the Taj Mahal for his wife Mumtaz Mahal, who died in childbirth when they were on their like 14th son or something, or a kid. I can't remember exactly how many children they had, but it was a lot, and he was extremely heartbroken over her death. And, you know, he made the Taj Mahal, which some say is like a solitary teardrop in time, if you will. Like if you flip it upside down, it looks like a teardrop. But it's just a beautiful, no matter how you look at the Taj Mahal, it's a beautiful monument to their love. And that's what Shalimar is about. It's about love and beauty and this idea of the Orient. And if you remember, there was like a saying back in the day, and it was something along the lines of proper women don't smoke and they don't wear Shalimar, you know, or something like that. And So, and there's, of course, Shalimar is like such a grand perfume, such a famous perfume in perfume history that it has like its own legend. That Jacques Guerlain was playing around with a formula of Jicky, right? He was playing around with the formula of Jicky and accidentally put too much vanillin into the formula, and bam, it smelled unexpectedly good, and out came Shalimar. And that's probably a super oversimplification. It's probably one of those, you know, to the victors go the recreation of history kind of thing, because Shalimar did take off and all of this good stuff that ended up happening with the House of Guerlain. Probably my favorite house, to be honest with you, even though nowadays, you know, they're going down dangerous paths, just like many, many houses are in deep peril nowadays. But that's why these type of brands are so important, are so, you know, vital to keeping perfume that is interesting and that takes chances alive. You know, there was actually a, when I was thinking about her saying that she wanted to give up, I was thinking about Abraham Lincoln. And again, as I was just kind of reading over this book, which I mentioned earlier, it's called Mind Your Own Business, if you're interested, by the way. But he makes the point that Abraham Lincoln never quit because he ran for the state legislature and lost. He ran for the House of Representatives, lost. He ran for the U.S. Congress, lost. He ran twice for the Senate, defeated both times. He ran for the vice president, lost. It wasn't until he basically was elected president that he found what he was supposed to do. And that's a story that's popular, but it just popped up in this book. And I was thinking about that in terms of, like, you know, Liz Moore's struggle to create her house and what she had to go through to basically get to that point, and perseverance and doing things that are different. And she was telling me when she made Salome that her children basically thought she had completely lost the plot, because Salome is this basically like Sex on the Skin. You know, it's very animalic, challenging. And in the intro of Bengale Rouge, you mentioned that she said she kind of put away those more animalic, fecal, challenging notes, which I love. I absolutely love those. The dirtier, the better for me. You know, I love the animalic, challenging smells. And so Bengale Rouge does give it this enveloping warmth. It fits that mold. And, you know, to compete with one of the most influential perfumes of all time just says a lot. But again, there are some differences. And there definitely are some differences. And so, the biggest difference, I would say, and other than just the slight differences here and there, which there are some, and you can tell, you can sense her style of kind of blending animalics here. But the biggest difference to me, just wearing it and kind of from memory, what I know about Shalimar and stuff like that, is you get this muskiness. Now, there's a couple fragrances, before we go into the muskiness, I just want to mention that there is a couple perfumes that really recreate the soul of Shalimar. And I have one of them right here that I'm going to share with you. This is probably my favorite Creed because of just what they've done here. And again, they use Shalimar as a template. There's no way that this was just one of those accidental creations. Anyone that knows anything about perfume history knows that the style of this is in Shalimar's style, but with Creed, you know, the way that Creed kind of uses that ambergris, sparkly, you know, easy to wear sandalwood, it's all here. And this is called Vanisia. So this is an older bottle of Vanisia. You can see kind of the short ingredient list. I got this from Rouge at Enchanté. I don't think this has ever been sprayed, or if it was sprayed, I think maybe he just sprayed it to test it to make sure that it's good still. But, oh man, I absolutely love this. You can also find this kind of in the woman's Creed bottle now, but even though Parfumo says it's still available, I believe it's discontinued. I don't think it's, I don't think you can buy this anymore. You can go to Creed's website and buy a $500 Vanisia flavored candle, but you can no longer buy you can no longer buy the perfume from what I see. It's not on the website anymore. And I also have a flacon. So I've got this is a 10-year-old flacon. Oh my God. I wish you could just smell the leather that Creed kind of puts around this. Whenever I opened this one, some of it kind of spilled onto this, like it leaked a little bit onto this part right here. And this just smells, oh my God, it is absolutely divine. And the notes for Vanisia are going to be very, very similar to what you're going to get in Bengale Rouge or Shalimar. It's no, you know, there's no secret here. But this came out in 1987. So Vanisia came out in 1987. And it's basically bergamot at the top. And that's it. That's all they list. Very similar to Shalimar's structure. Bergamot at the top, Bulgarian rose in the heart, sandalwood, ambergris, and vanilla in the base. I have recommended this to people who have with noses that I really respect, and they've come back and said, man, this thing smells like there's Mysore sandalwood in here. In the older batches, obviously the 2013 batch didn't have Mysore, I wouldn't think, but it has that smell about it. It has this feel of real ambergris. Everything feels extremely high quality, and when I wear this, I enjoy it just as much as if I'm wearing Shalimar, just as much. And so, you know, it's you can see kind of how far Shalimar's reach goes into the future, that it's still influencing fragrances 100 years later. But I wanted to mention that because that's from 1987. And the biggest difference, though, that you notice between Liz Moore's recreation of Shalimar and Bengale Rouge is this muskiness. And if you know anything about the 80s, you know that these kind of musky animalic fragrances became the hot thing. The hit of the 80s was this animalic muskiness. You kind of see it in fragrances like KL by Karl Lagerfeld. This is for women, but you could also go with the one for men, which looks like this. This is the men's version of they call it KL Homme. They're both just fantastic, but they both have this ambery, musky, animalic, you know, furry feel. Very powdery, furry feel, right? And then the big hit that everyone knows, of course, is Obsession. And the original Obsession was in a cologne spray, which I never knew until Armando shared it with me. And this is definitely the one to go for. It's so furry and animalic, and it just, you know, it just sticks to you. And that furry animalicness just comes out when your body heat warms up. Oh, God. I wish you could smell this from the atomizer right here. Oh, it's so, so good. But this connection to the 80s style kind of warm fur, yes, there's some animalics, but there's this warm, powdery, almost enveloping feel, is what Bengale Rouge kind of adds to the table. And you take that furry, musky, animalic bit that is amped up. Not saying there's no musk in Shalimar, but for me, Shalimar is much more about things like vanilla and the bergamot, and, you know, there is a little bit of rose in there, of course, and there is a little bit of animalics. There's castoreum in there because, to me, it smells like there's castoreum. I don't think in Shalimar they ever actually acknowledge that there's castoreum. I think they just say balsamic notes. But for me, there is this castoreum feel because with Shalimar, you get this feeling of almost like warmth from, not from like the sun or anything like that, but from two bodies kind of like keeping each other warm, right? Imagine like two bodies making love and you're pressed up against somebody, right? And the heat of one body is transferring to the heat of the other, right? And that's the feeling of it. That's the feeling of warmth that I get from Shalimar. And it's here as well in Bengale Rouge. There is this feeling of just like natural warmth, you know, like a cat rubbing against your body or rubbing against your leg or rubbing against your hand, right? You know, you pet the cat and you can feel the warm-blooded nature, how alive it is, right? That's kind of the feeling that you get. That's the warmness that you get. But along with that, you get these extra resins, and that's where Liz Moore's, I think, shines. I honestly think her most amazing work to me is the way that even in the modern day with all of the IFRA regulations, that she can still make something like Salome, which is so animalic and, you know, it reminds me of a fragrance from way back in the day called Bal Versailles, which is just like a ball of civet. Just imagine these ladies from the court in Versailles that, you know, haven't showered in weeks and maybe they've been up to some lascivious doings, let's say, right? There's a little bit of that going on. And, but the real fragrance that I think highlights her ability to use these resins is Anubis. Anubis, I think, is a masterpiece. Like, literally, legit masterpiece. I am in love with Anubis. Oh my God. Oh, so Anubis, is supposed to be represented from the Egyptian times, and there's supposed to be this, you know, mixture of like, you know, imagine that you're a Egyptian pharaoh, right? And they bring these gifts to you of frankincense and jasmine and sandalwood and saffron and suede. There's a suede-like leathery bit that kind of comes through, but it's the mixture of the resins that does it for me. This labdanum, frankincense, and other things in here that I'm sure are not listed. The saffron plays a big role, but oh God, man. I'll tell you what, I am absolutely in love with Anubis. And it shows her ability to kind of use these resins in a way that is just so unique. I've never smelled anything that smells like Anubis. Nothing. Zero. And this leathery, smoky DNA is people do it all the time. Houses do it all the time. But it's nothing like Anubis. And you get a little bit of that. Yeah, you get a little bit of these resins underneath. But very, how do I say this? You know, almost like, imagine a chef cooking, right? And they maybe know a recipe, like imagine like a grandma who has cooked her whole life, right? And she knows the recipe like the back of her hand. And she doesn't actually read the recipe. She just kind of puts like a pinch of this in or a dash of that in because she knows, right? It's almost like, it's almost more, instead of a science, like she's reading a recipe, it's more like an art, right? She knows exactly how much of this ingredient to put in or a dash of that. That's how the resins feel like they're done here. Like, oh, fuck. You know, almost like she's making it for her cat, for Mimi. And, you know, everyone, if you've ever had a cat, you know some of them have quirks, right? They like to do things that are strange and funny sometimes, and they'll fall off of windowsills, but they still always look elegant doing it, you know? And it's almost like she's making it, she's making it for a pet, an animal that she obviously knows and loves, but that she knows all of the little intricacies and details of. And there's just little crevices inside of this fragrance that you can just kind of almost like walk into and go into that you wouldn't think should be there, if that makes sense. It feels like, I mean, the attention to detail for something that's so similar to a fragrance 100 years ago is what gets me with all of her work, all of it. You know, everything from Salome. I have videos up on Tobacco Rose, which I absolutely love. I have videos on Spell 125. I have videos on Hera. I have a video on Angelique. I still am holding out doing a video on Anubis and Salome, my two favorites. And I'm waiting. I still am going to do one video on Dryad, which I think is if I was going to buy one full bottle from her still, it would probably be Dryad or Hera. I love Hera. Even though Hera was made for her daughter's wedding, I'm in love with Hera. It works amazing on my skin. It's like a niche Dior Homme. You know, the way that ambrette and iris come together are just, I've never seen anyone that can use iris like she does. I mean, she puts Francesca Bianchi to shame, in my opinion. So, so yes, I mean, there are past experience in her work. If you know her work, you'll kind of see some of these you'll see some of these little crevices and little lagoons that your nose can kind of go into and explore a little bit here and there. But overall, it's this sensual vanilla labdanum base. And what's very interesting to me, and this is where my brain really started to kind of drift, if you will, right, is Bengale Rouge came out in 2019, okay? It was a release that obviously it's been done before. You know, I mentioned just a couple of them, like Vanisia. I mentioned these musky animalic fragrances of the 80s. I didn't mention some of the others that you could maybe point to, like, I was going to see if I had... Dana's Tabu, right? You know, this is from the 40s. So Shalimar's from the 20s, Tabu's from the 40s, but you get the idea, right? But it's been a while since I've had a fragrance, I would say, that is done so well that I can wear it in replacement of Shalimar and be completely satisfied. The only one I've really ever come across is Vanisia. That's it. And this is extremely hard to find now. And, you know, it's not hyped is the thing. So you can still find it. You're just going to pay you're going to pay a little bit of money. You're going to pay $250, $300, whatever it is, some $400, whatever, however big the bottle you're going to get, you're going to pay for it. But Vanisia and Shalimar go hand in hand to me. I can wear either or and be happy. And then, and I discovered this before I discovered Bengale Rouge. In 2020, Chanel put out a perfume. And Chanel put out a perfume that, to me, I can also wear in replacement of Shalimar and be just as happy. It's a different fragrance, though. This is probably the most different of the three that I'm going to kind of mention here. You know, I've mentioned Vanisia, Shalimar, Bengale Rouge all in one category. This one is in that category, but it's probably the most different of the bunch. It's Le Lion by Chanel. And remember, she was saying, who am I? I'm no Chanel. Well, this is Le Lion from 2020. And Le Lion, oh God, I love this DNA. Anything like this DNA that's done in this style is just a pure love for me. It's just instant love. This is smoky and resinous. And again, the top is bergamot and lemon, which is a very similar top. If I had to guess, right, because there's no real note tree listed on Parfumo for her fragrances or on her website. There's no real note tree. She just kind of gives them to you, right? And so it just lists them out, and you don't really know. There's no top, middle, bottom is the way. She doesn't do it that way. But on Parfumo, it just lists them all. If I had to guess a top note, like if I had to create it from smell, I would guess bergamot, lemon, for sure. And that's exactly what Chanel did with Le Lion. Okay, exactly. And then what they did is they did labdanum and bourbon vanilla, which is basically what exactly there's vanilla and labdanum in Bengale Rouge. And the thing that Le Lion did, though, that took it off course a little bit from this DNA, is they added this patchouli, which reminds some people of Coromandel's patchouli and sandalwood, but they amped up the labdanum. Heavy, something real heavy. This is one of my favorite labdanum fragrances of all time. If this is my favorite vanilla of all time, this you could say is up there for my favorite labdanums of all time. You could also add in the Zoo's Everlasting. The Zoo's Everlasting is a fantastic labdanum. Tom Ford Sahara Noir, that's a fantastic lab. I wish I had a bottle of that. And so I'm looking at the timeline of this, and I know, trust me, people are watching her work. They're watching her work because she doesn't follow the trends and she goes her own way. And I really respect her for that. You know, even in our interview, when we were talking about things like Diaghilev, okay? And I told her Diaghilev was a 1,000-pound fragrance. And she goes, what? It is? She had no idea. Diaghilev was a $1,000 perfume. And this is basically, you could almost consider this competitors to her. Because for me, there is zero difference in quality. In fact, in sometimes, I'm thinking the Papillon fragrances are higher quality than the Rouges, which are sometimes 10 times as much, right? And so that just goes to show how she goes how much she just kind of stays in her lane, does her thing. But other houses are watching. And my theory on this is that Bengale Rouge, this style kind of inspired Chanel a little bit. Now, Chanel's a huge house. They could have been working on this for 10 years for all I know, right? But it is very interesting to me that this comes out and then the very next year, Le Lion comes out. And, you know, now, so before there were 3 fragrances that I could wear in place of Shalimar and be completely content. We could have Shalimar, we could have Vanisia, or we could have Le Lion. Now, I can add a 4th, and it's Bengale Rouge. This can be added to the list for me. You know, and I will tell you that there's this Papanax note in here, which, you know, the note du jour, of course, for Shalimar is vanilla, right? The note du jour for Le Lion is labdanum. The note du jour for Bengale Rouge, it very well may be a Papanax. I mean, it may be this sweet myrrh because it gives off this kind of warm, aged whiskey, some people say. I went to the Perfume Society, and they say that a Papanax can smell like aged whiskey, sweet and bitter caramel, which there is this caramel flow to it. You know, some people talk about the way that it feels, not in smell. It doesn't smell like a cheap, sweet caramel like Xerjoff would do or anything like that. No, this smells like a... It's almost like the feeling. Have you ever smelled, and I know I'm getting really esoteric here, okay? I know I'm getting really in the weeds, but have you ever smelled Russian oud? And have you ever smelled that lava-like? Go read Kafka's, go read her blog about Russian oud. Just type in Areej Dore Russian oud and scroll down. You'll see the Kafkaesque blog or whatever it's called. She's amazing. Such a great writer. The images, the writing style, and she describes Areej Dore Russian oud as having this lava-like feel. And that's how Bengale Rouge is, but in this warm Papanax, which is this sweet myrrh. And it gives off this powdery, and they say almost like this velvet texture, and that's exactly what you get here. There's some green touches, like you're crushing ivy leaves almost. And the consistency of the Papanax is almost like this molasses. So imagine this molasses style thick, right? But sweet and smooth and enveloping and powdery and vanilla. And oh man, it is such an honor to wear this and a pleasure to get to know this. And I'm so glad I get to put a video up on this because there is not enough talk on the House of Papillon. No matter how much talk there is, I'm telling you, there's not enough. As a perfume lover, this house is a gem, and it has to be protected, and it has to be kind of given to other perfume lovers to explore. I know I've talked a lot about Papillon on the channel. Some people have recently bought a couple of her fragrances, and I know that they're also in love with it. Some people that I really trust. So I'm glad word is getting around. And I can't wait to see what else she creates. I know she's on a little bit of a hiatus right now from kind of creating. But whenever she's ready, I'm sure the community will welcome her back with open arms. So that's kind of my take on it. I mean, it's an amazing fragrance. It's in the style of, you know, of Shalimar. And there's a lot to explore. A lot to love about Bengale Rouge, as usual. So I still have to do a video on Dryad, which is the final sample, and then we have the 2 full bottles, and then I'll have videos on the whole house. And I'm hoping one day we can get Liz Moores back on the channel just for a chat. It would be amazing. I really enjoyed our time together. If you have not watched that interview from 8-9 months ago, whenever it was, go check it out. I have a playlist called Interviews, and the Liz Moore Papillon interview is on that list. So it's an amazing watch. It's only an hour. an hour and 15 minutes, I think. So thank you for watching, everybody. Do give me your feedback on Bengale Rouge if you've smelled it, if you've you know, experienced the house, if you're familiar with the house of Papillon. Let me know if you agree or disagree with my take on this house and what your thoughts are. And I hope to see you in the comments. I love to see your faces in the comments. I love reading your comments. I try to respond to every single one. So I appreciate the support everyone's given me. And hopefully we'll see each other again soon. Cheers. Bye now.